Welcome back to the Hardware Unboxed News Corner on this hot, summery Australian day. Today's episode is probably a little different from some of the usual episodes we do, in that we're only going to talk about two topics: the recent slate of leaks relating to AMD's upcoming products and Nvidia's new Titan RTX. We'll be giving a few of our thoughts on these things throughout this video, so a bit of a news opinions episode or something like that. So we're going to start with the AMD rumors because there's a lot of stuff to cover and a lot of you guys have been asking for our opinions on it. All of this information first appeared in a video from Jim over at Adored TV, who has leaked a few things in the past, and let's just say these rumors have sent tech enthusiasts into a bit of a whirlwind this week. I think the Navi related GPU rumors are probably the best point to start. The basics for these rumors are this: AMD is allegedly planning to release an RX 3080, RX 3070 and RX 3060 based on their upcoming Navi architecture. The RX 3080 will be about 15% faster than Vega 64 at 150 watts, allowing it to compete with the RTX 2070, and it'll be priced at $250. The RX 3070 will be around Vega 56 performance for $200, and the RX 3060 will be 75 watts at $130, and it will compete with the GTX 1060. Now, at first glance, this sounds amazing. A $250 GPU from AMD competing with a $500 GPU from Nvidia. That sounds, well, I guess it sounds too good to be true, and basically that's because it is. This rumor simply fails the common sense test on a number of grounds, so let's go through and cover them all. I guess I'll start with the pricing here. Firstly, companies do not set pricing this far ahead of launch. Even if we're talking about a full unveil at CES, that show is roughly a month away, and there's simply no way a company has finalized pricing a month in advance. It just does not happen. It's actually quite common for us to receive a GPU or CPU under NDA, maybe a week in advance, and it will only be a few days before launch that pricing is actually finalized and given to us. People in the industry have mentioned to us that typically, though, pricing is decided about a week before launch for most products. While these sorts of products are designed around, rough price targets, for example, mid-range, high-end, enterprise, that sort of thing, the products themselves are typically finalized without an exact price point in mind. The company would then figure out how much the product will cost to make based on yields and potential binning. They'll then factor in a margin and then only decide on a price near launch after also factoring in current market conditions. So while it's not out of the question to have rough specifications finalized well before launch, pricing and even final clock speeds and that sort of thing often aren't decided until much closer to the actual release. Then for these GPUs, the pricing simply does not make any sense from a number of angles. AMD may want to undercut Nvidia with their next generation of GPUs. That would make sense, they've done that sort of thing in the past. But no sane company would choose to create a product and sell it for half the price of their only other competitor. So in our opinion, it's completely ridiculous to suggest AMD will release a Navi GPU at $250 that delivers performance equivalent to Nvidia's $500 RTX 2070. It makes zero business sense, and no executive at AMD would ever sign off on pricing like that. If a company wanted to undercut its competitor, you'd maybe be looking at a 20% lower price at best, so that would mean AMD competing with an RX 2070 equivalent for around $400. That would sound reasonable, but AMD isn't going to sacrifice juicy margins just for the sake of destroying Nvidia or whatever. They're a business, they want to make money, so they're going to price their products with current market conditions in mind. But that's not the only thing that makes no sense. AMD literally just released the Radeon RX 590 at $280. And now we have a leak suggesting they will announce a product in a month that is twice as fast at a lower price. That's just completely utterly ludicrous. The only thing about this GPU leak that makes even the remotest sense is the TDP and memory configuration, perhaps the naming as well, though I'm not sure any of it is true. AMD has publicly stated that 7nm is allowing the company to produce products that deliver the same performance at half the power consumption. So for the supposed RX 3070, 7nm should allow AMD to create a product that performs around the same level as the 210 watt Vega 56 at 120 watts. But pricing it at $200, yeah, I'm not sure about that one. Then we have the third generation Ryzen products. This leak talks about 10 separate products ranging from the Ryzen 3 3300 up to the Ryzen 9 3850X. You'd think AMD might go with a naming scheme like that, so I guess we're off to a good start. Most of these CPUs sound like they're within the realm of possibility. Entry-level parts getting a bump up to 6 cores and 12 threads. Ryzen 5 reportedly becomes 8 cores and 16 threads. Ryzen 7 goes up to 12 cores and 24 threads. Then Ryzen 9 comes in offering 16 cores and 32 threads. These designs are suggested to use AMD's 14nm I/O die in conjunction with 1 or 2 7nm Zen 2 dies, which again would make sense going on what AMD has shown for their upcoming server products. But when you look a little closer, again, things don't really line up. Take this one example, the Ryzen 7 3700X. This is claimed to be a 12-core part with a 4.2 GHz base clock, 5 GHz boost, and 105 watt TDP. You look across the rest of the table, and yeah, I guess that looks reasonable on face value. But back with 2nd gen Ryzen, the Ryzen 7 2700X was also a 105 watt part, but this time only included 8 cores, a base clock of 3.7 GHz, and a max boost of 4.3 GHz. So this leak is essentially claiming that 3rd gen Ryzen is providing 4 extra cores plus an additional 500 MHz on the base clock within the same 105 watt power envelope. So 50% more cores and a 14% higher base clock. Now, we have to remember when AMD said at their Zen 2 unveil that 7nm is allowing them to achieve upwards of 1.25 times the performance at the same power consumption. So does it sound realistic that AMD would be able to put in 50% more cores and clock them all 14% higher within the same TDP? The TDP has, I guess, never been a great metric, and AMD's previous Ryzen lineups have also had a few oddities, but I could list several more strange things about this lineup that just don't sound right when measuring up the clock speeds and TDPs, and don't align with what AMD has done in the past. Like how there's a 4 GHz 8-core chip in this lineup at 95 watts, but then a 16-core chip at 4.3 GHz, and that's only 135 watts. The clock speed increase and the core increase doesn't seem to be matching the TDP there as well. It's just not adding up to me. But on top of that, there's one key part of the CPU leak that makes the least sense, and that's the unveil date at CES. And I guess this also applies to the GPU lineup as well, which is supposedly going to be unveiled at CES as well. At this point, I think a lot of people are expecting AMD to do a big unveil of these products at CES, considering CEO Lisa Su will be on stage talking about 7nm products. But from what we are hearing, that simply isn't the case. And by from what we're hearing, I actually mean from what we're not hearing. Whenever AMD releases a new lineup of CPUs or GPUs, they host a tech day where all the enthusiast media gather to learn about these new products. It's at these events we usually hear about the products in detail, and there's several NDA dates afterwards for announcements, reviews, and so forth. This is the way AMD has been operating for the last few years at least. So far, there is no planned tech day for AMD at CES. In fact, at last year's CES, AMD did host a tech day. It's where they announced the Ryzen APU lineup and a few new Ryzen mobile SKUs. But we heard about that event as early as September, so nearly 4 months ahead of time, which is fairly typical for planning these sorts of trips. So if there was a tech day, we would have heard about it by now. AMD are planning a few smaller things at CES this year. There will be a press reception and some meetings available, typical sort of things at these major events. But if there's no tech day, you can take it to the bank that there won't be a major unveil of a full product lineup. Now, it's likely that Lisa Su will take the stage at CES and announce something, considering they have this big keynote to talk 7nm, but I'd only be expecting a product teaser at this stage. And here's another example for what I mean. At Computex 2018, AMD did not host a tech day, but they had a press conference. There, they announced 2nd gen Threadripper, but only talked about a handful of specs, 12nm, up to 32 cores, and some ballpark specs. There were no official product names, there were no finalized SKUs, specs, and there were certainly no prices. I think that's the sort of thing we can expect at CES, not some massive unveil of an entire lineup of CPUs and GPUs with pricing, specs, and everything else finalized. On top of that, AMD has already said and reiterated that the first 7nm Zen 2 products will be their 2nd generation EPYC CPUs, which haven't been officially launched yet. So it's unlikely that we'll see a full 3rd gen Ryzen unveil until after 2nd gen EPYC is unveiled. And by unveiled, I mean the full lineup of SKUs, all the specs, pricing, and everything for that. So this has been a lot of discussion on the one topic, but there's just a lot of things about this leak that fail the common sense test, don't align with AMD's previous stated claims, don't align with what AMD has done in the past, and simply don't fit in with what we know about AMD's release timeline for the next couple of months. Last up, I'm going to have a quick discussion about the Titan RTX, which Nvidia officially unveiled earlier this week after a few suspicious product placements from a few top influencers. In case you missed it, it's a $2,500 graphics card that uses a fully unlocked Turing TU102 GPU, so it comes with the full complement of 4,608 CUDA cores, 576 Tensor cores, and 72 RT cores. In comparison, the RTX 2080 Ti is cut down slightly with 4,352 CUDA cores. Clock speeds are similar to the 2080 Ti Founders Edition at 1350 MHz base, though it has a higher boost clock up to 1770 MHz. You're also getting 24 GB of GDDR6 on a 384-bit bus for 672 GB per second of bandwidth, and everything comes with a 280 watt TDP. The Titan RTX is in a really interesting position in the market. Nvidia sort of positions this as a gaming card, claiming it's the fastest single GPU on the market and all that stuff. But at $2,500, it's really not going to be on the radar of most gamers, especially when the 2080 Ti is already out and available for $1,200. We're looking at around 15% more performance than the 2080 Ti for more than double the price, so yeah, not something gamers are going to rush out and buy. This leaves the Titan X as more of a workstation or compute-focused card, but when you look at the specifications, it's a bit weird. Yes, it has 24 GB of VRAM and more single precision and tensor compute performance than its predecessor, the Titan V, as well as more memory bandwidth. But at the same time, you aren't getting half-rate double precision compute like you get with the Titan V. Instead, double precision compute is cut down considerably. This makes the Titan V still faster for double precision workloads. So someone interested in a Titan RTX would need to be after a card with lots of VRAM, but not for FP64 workloads. If you want FP64 performance, you should go for the Titan V, but then you miss out on the large amount of memory, and compute performance in other areas isn't as good. To get the best of both worlds, you need the Quadro GV100, as even Nvidia's Quadro RTX cards don't offer half-rate double precision. But then a Titan RTX buyer would also need to not be interested in the certifications you get from Quadro cards, the different line of drivers, or ECC memory support, which are all reasons to buy a GPU like the more expensive Quadro RTX 6000. So yeah, like past Titan launches, the Titan RTX is a strange one. I think its value to buyers has been dampened a fair bit with the 2080 Ti launching before the Titan RTX. Usually the Titan card comes first. That interests, a few gamers with deep pockets. Then later we get a high-end Ti model that's a more reasonable price. But there's really no incentive for gamers to buy it. And for workstations, it's a pretty niche product compared to Nvidia's Quadro and Volta offerings. Anyway, that's basically it for this week's News Corner. Just 2 topics covered, but I really wanted to dig into the AMD rumors because they're blowing up and I think people are getting a little bit ahead of themselves. Honestly, these sorts of rumors aren't good for the industry. It hypes people up for mythical products, and when the real products are unveiled, people can get disappointed because it's not as awesome as the leak suggested it would be. And that can even be the case when the products are still good value, good products in their own right. So that's why we tend not to focus on rumors too much. You can subscribe to get News Corner in your inbox every week. Consider supporting us on Patreon to get access to our exclusive Discord chat and monthly live streams, and I'll catch you in the next one. Gotta find that fly that